The government said the land was too dead to farm. His village laughed. Then came the drought that changed everything. Malik stood at the edge of what the government had officially given up on. The plot sat on the northern edge of the village, where the irrigation channels from the collective system ended. 3 hectares of cracked earth, pale as bone. Nothing had grown here for 5 years. The cooperative's engineer had filed a report. The soil was depleted, water access was poor, and the investment wasn't worth it. The government recommended it be left to rest. His grandfather had farmed this land. When Malik was 7, his grandfather had held his hand and walked every corner of it, teaching him to read the soil, to feel the seasons in the air. That was 30 years ago. After his grandfather died, his father had tried for a year and quit. The land was bad luck, people said. Malik's mother had suggested he use the family labor on other plots, better plots, like his cousins did. There was no shame in it. But last winter, Malik had found his grandfather's irrigation blueprint, a hand-drawn map, decades old, tucked inside a locked wooden toolbox in his father's storage room. The map showed something no one else had ever built, an ancient system his grandfather had designed but never finished, channeling water from a spring 2 kilometers west, using gravity and terracing instead of relying on the main cooperative channel. The blueprint was detailed, deliberate, as if his grandfather had known someday someone would need it. Malik had spent 3 months just reading it. "You're going to waste your time on that land?" Old Chen, the cooperative leader, had asked when Malik proposed using family labor to restore it. Old Chen controlled the water allocations, the equipment sharing schedule, everything that moved through the village's farming system. He was not a cruel man, but he was efficient. Dead land was dead land. "My grandfather believed in it," Malik said. Old Chen had laughed. Not cruelly, just with the practical certainty of someone who had made peace with limits. "Your grandfather believed in many things." Malik's wife, Lin, had not laughed. She had watched him study the blueprint by lantern light for weeks. She had not argued when he proposed replanting cotton on the dead land instead of accepting a wage job in the factory an hour away, as she had wanted. But she had held their youngest daughter close one morning and asked, quietly, "What if it doesn't work?" He had no answer for that. The first phase was simple: restore the old spring. The blueprint showed a source, a precise location in the small hills west of the village. Malik borrowed tools from the cooperative. The water had to come from somewhere, so Chen could not refuse without cause. In March, after the early thaw, he walked west with his son, Karim, who was 17 and already skeptical about farming. The spring was real. It emerged from the base of a limestone outcropping, weak but constant, even in the dry season. Malik and Karim spent 2 weeks clearing the surrounding brush and stone, understanding finally what his grandfather had known: the spring never truly died. It had simply been forgotten. Next came the channel. Malik carved the irrigation path according to the blueprint: small stone walls to direct flow, slight angles to use gravity rather than pumps. No mechanized equipment. The method was old because it was reliable. The work took longer than Malik calculated. His hands developed calluses he had not felt since childhood. Karim complained about school deadlines and friends in the village who worked easier jobs. But by late April, water moved through Malik's channel. The sight of it stopped him. Clear water, flowing in a line he had imagined from his grandfather's drawing, cutting through the pale dead earth. Lin brought tea that afternoon and watched without speaking. That silence was not doubt. It was attention. The actual planting began in early May. Malik prepared the soil with compost accumulated from years of family waste, organic matter he had saved when others burned it. He used government-approved cotton seeds from the cooperative's distribution, but he planted them in rows his grandfather's map suggested, slightly offset from standard spacing, allowing better drainage. He watered each row by hand for the first month, using a simple pump and cloth to direct the spring water. By June, the first shoots emerged. They were small, pale, but undeniably cotton plants growing from land the government had written off. That was when the setback came. A virus, a common cotton disease, moved through the crop. Malik recognized it by the discolored leaves, the weakness in the stems. He had read about it in an old agricultural manual his grandfather had kept. The standard treatment required pesticides from the factory cooperative in the city, chemicals expensive and hard to obtain without an official agricultural inspector's recommendation. and inspectors did not recommend treatment for land officially designated as non-productive. Malik walked through his crop one evening, watching the disease advance. Karim found him there, standing in the middle of rows that suddenly felt fragile. "We can still get work in the factory," Karim said. "It's not too late to stop." Malik did not answer. He walked home and spent the night reading his grandfather's manual again, looking for a method the old man might have used. By dawn, he had a theory. An ancient technique, not widely practiced anymore, removing infected plants by hand immediately upon spotting disease, isolating the spread, burning the removed plants to prevent spore distribution, and reinforcing the remaining plants with a tea made from neem leaves, a plant that grew wild in the hills. Indigenous but effective. Time-consuming but free. For 3 weeks, Malik walked his crop every morning and afternoon, identifying infected plants, removing them surgically, burning them in a small kiln beside the fields. Lynn helped. Karim helped. His father, watching from his own plot, eventually came and helped without being asked. The work was tedious and repetitive, but it worked. By late July, the disease had stopped spreading. The remaining plants recovered, growing taller, stronger, developing the flowering buds that meant cotton would follow. Then came August, and the water allocation changed. A government notice arrived at the cooperative office. Due to drought predictions for the autumn and a reduced snowmelt forecast, water allotments were being cut by 40%. The main irrigation channel, the one that served most of the village's productive plots, would operate on a strict schedule. 3 days per week, no exceptions. Malik's spring-fed system was not mentioned in the order. It was too small, too marginal, too official and visible to warrant inclusion in a resource crisis. But Old Chen arrived at Malik's plot with a government official, a woman with a clipboard and an expression that suggested she had visited every struggling farm in 3 provinces. "You're exceeding the village's water allocation," she said. "The spring belongs to the collective. Your usage needs to be registered and restricted accordingly." "The spring is on ancestral land," Malik said. "My grandfather." "Past use is not current law," the official said. She was not unkind, but the kindness was exhausted. "Your system can operate 2 days per week, synchronized with the main channel schedule. Any deviation, and the spring access will be sealed." It was a limit that would not support cotton through the critical August-September growth period. Not enough. That night, Malik did not sleep. He sat outside, looking at his map, at his plants, at a situation that felt like the universe testing whether he had truly believed his grandfather's words or only imagined believing them. Lynn found him at dawn. "We sell the tools back to the cooperative," she said. "We find other work. This is not shameful. We tried." But Malik shook his head. "The drought is coming. The whole village will face water shortage. Maybe there is another solution." He spent the next day walking every centimeter of his grandfather's blueprint. And that night, he found something in the corner of the map, a small notation in his grandfather's handwriting, faded but legible: "Second source. North, beneath the farmer's marker stone." Malik knew that stone. It sat in the common area, a boundary marker from 3 generations ago, worn smooth by decades of use. He had walked past it hundreds of times without seeing anything beneath it. He brought a shovel and dug. 3 meters down, through rocky soil, his shovel struck something hollow. An underground water channel. Ancient, pre-collective, built by farmers generations before the government system existed. It ran north-south, and it carried water, not much, but a steady flow that bypassed the official allocation system entirely. Malik could connect his spring to this channel. He could tap a source the government had never quantified, never regulated, never restricted. It was technically unauthorized. Using water outside the collective system violated cooperative rules. But it was also not explicitly forbidden. The channel existed before the collective, on land that predated official policy. It was the kind of decision a farmer made alone in the dark, where no one else would ever know his reasoning. Malik worked for 7 nights, carving the connecting channel, testing the flow, ensuring no one saw him. By the 8th day, his cotton crop had water that the drought could not cut off. The dry season came harsh that year. The main irrigation channel operated on schedule, but farmers fought over every hour. Crops across the village withered. By mid-September, neighboring fields were showing the pale color of stress. Malik's crop stayed green. Old Chen noticed first. He came to the field on a morning when the official drought coordinator was touring properties. Chen's face had that particular expression of a man who had just realized someone had outmaneuvered administrative control without technically breaking any stated rule. "The underground channel," Chen said quietly. "Your grandfather knew about it." "He mapped it," Malik said. "He was supposed to restore it." Chen looked at the healthy plants, at the water flowing steady through Malik's system while everywhere else the land cracked. He looked at the blueprint, which Malik had finally shown him. He looked back at Malik. "If the government inspector finds out, you lose everything," Chen said. "If the drought continues, the village loses everything," Malik replied. "My system could provide water to any plot connected to it. The old channels might still work if someone rebuilt them." Chen was quiet for a long time. "Your grandfather and I were boys together," he said finally. "He wanted to restore the old system. The government would not allow it then. They said it was inefficient. They said the collective system was better." He paused. It was easier to accept the decision than fight it. When the official inspector came through the next day, Chen walked with her through Malik's field. "This plot is flourishing," the inspector noted, suspicious. "Good family management," Chen said. "Young farmer, careful technique. He's not exceeding allocation, he's just more efficient." Chen showed her the main channel logs, which recorded nothing false. The spring water was not technically part of the restricted allocation. The inspector moved on. By early October, Malik's cotton was ready to harvest. The bowls were full, the quality visible from a distance. He called in family labor, his father, Karim, his cousins, Lin, and they began the hand-picking work, filling basket after basket with cotton. The village came to watch. Farmers whose own crops had failed. Neighbors who had laughed or doubted. Karim's friends from school, who had suggested other work. They watched cotton come from land that was supposed to be dead. Old Chen brought the cooperative's small processing scale and did the official weighing. The yield was not enormous, roughly 800 kilograms from 3 hectares, modest by industrial standards. But for abandoned land, in a drought year, with family labor and water from a restored spring, it was exceptional. "Your grandfather would be proud," Chen said, handing Malik the certification of sale. The government would buy the cotton at standard commodity rates, enough to provide income through winter, enough to justify keeping the plot, enough to continue next year. More importantly, other farmers began asking Malik about the old channel. How it worked. Whether it could be extended. Whether there were other forgotten systems beneath their own failing plots. Malik showed them the blueprint. He taught them what his grandfather had taught him. By winter, 3 other families were working on their own restoration projects, using the ancient channel system. The drought broke in November with heavy snow in the mountains. The spring water ran high into December. When the government conducted its annual water usage audit the following spring, the numbers showed something unexpected. The total water extracted from the underground system had exceeded normal collection rates, but the old sources had somehow recharged beyond official predictions. The inspector's report noted natural spring behavior, suggesting the underground system was more resilient than previously understood. No one was penalized. The system was left alone. 2 years later, Malik's cotton plot had expanded to 6 hectares, including land other farmers had abandoned. A small cooperative within the cooperative had formed, Malik's grandfather's old network, coming back into being through water, through technique, through the refusal of one farmer to accept that land was dead when it only needed to be remembered. Karim, now 19, had decided to stay. He was studying irrigation engineering through a distance program, learning the old methods that were not in government textbooks. Lin's doubts had shifted into planning. She was tracking market prices, thinking about whether the family should begin selling directly to textile mills in the city, keeping more of the profit. On a spring morning, Malik walked his fields with Karim, showing him where the new channel would go, how to read the land like his grandfather had. They stood where dead earth had been, where his grandfather's map had promised something worth believing in. Why did grandfather think so deeply about water? Karim asked. Because without water, nothing lives, Malik said. And with water, you can grow something from nothing. He understood that not all systems need to be new to be worth restoring. Karim nodded, writing something in a small notebook, his own blueprints beginning. Behind them, the spring ran clear and steady, carrying life through land the world had abandoned, through a system that remembered what it was built to do. "The difference between what is dead and what is sleeping," Malik said quietly, "is knowing when to wake it."